I think what makes Sochi so controversial is the cost of the Olympic Games. I mean, it's the most expensive games in history. The place where it is taking place, it is, you know, that the wonderful opening ceremony that we watched the other night on TV was actually taking place a few minutes away from the border with Abkhazia, which is a controversial territory claimed by Georgia and which declared its independence in 1993. And okay, it is the first time in history that the Olympic Committee has actually awarded games to a city which is so close to non-resolved armed conflicts. And the third thing that makes Sochi controversial is, of course, the ecological costs linked with the buildings and the very small attention that the Russian government has accorded to the ecological side of the games. The implications for the regions could have been marvelous. One could have imagined that Sochi would have a regional economical impact and partially could have helped bring down a little bit the tensions with Georgia if, for instance, some kind of agreements could have been reached between 2007, that is the date when the games were given to Sochi, and 2014. But as you perfectly know, that has not been the case. Quite on the contrary, in 2008 we could see this huge war in South Ossetia, that is between Georgia and the Russian troops in South Ossetia, and the tensions still last year basically were pretty high till the change of government in Georgia. The consequences for the rest of the Caucasus could also be extremely positive because, as you probably know, the Russian government has also programmed to develop 5 big winter resorts in the north of the Caucasus. Basically, if you take the 7 autonomous republics from Adygea to Dagestan, in 5 of the 7 republics there is a project to develop a huge skiing resort. And of course, Sochi, in spite of all the problems we've just underlined, comes out at the end of the day of being at least an international positive celebration of sport. We could imagine that this could have a positive impact on the development of these 5 big skiing resorts in the North Caucasus. The impact of the games on the international positions of Russia has been just wonderful. If you look at Mr. Putin's decisions in the last 2 months, I have the feeling that the Russian Federation has discovered something so European called soft power. He tried to remove all the irritants between the Western countries and Russia. For instance, he freed this young woman from the Pussy Riot group. Then he freed Mr. Khodorkovsky, this big oligarch, former owner of UCAS, who had been jailed 10 years ago. All these 2 moves came to a surprise, I would say, to most of the observers of Russian internal politics, at least to me. Then on the international scene, you could see Russia much more constructive on Syria. And on Ukraine, last week at the EU-Russia summit, Mr. Putin was extremely constructive during the press conference last week. He said very clearly that Russia will still support Ukraine, that Russia is in the business of supporting the people of Ukraine and not a concrete government. So I think that the games had already had this wonderful positive impact on Russian foreign policies and internal politics too. I hope it will not do that, because again, I think if Russia does that, all the good signs it has been sending since last month, I would say, would be reversed tremendously. And then for the International Olympic Committee, that would be also something very bad, because they are now under fire of the media, particularly the Western media, for having attributed the games to a city where it would have meant so much spendings and so much consequences for the local ecology. If on top of that, after the games, you see a crackdown on freedom or on human rights defenders, I think the International Olympic Committee will be under fire. I think there are limits to what you can do in terms of foreign politics around Olympic Games, unless the government which is hosting the Games is willing to change its face. And in the case of Russia, very clearly, as I said, we've seen the government itself willing to show a better face before the Games, and I hope after the Games too.